Happy Friday, everybody. This is March 23rd. Today's bell ringer is going to talk about, obviously, nuclear weapons. I want you to write down in your bell ringers what is one way that nuclear weapons has changed the world. At least the use of them have changed the world. And as you can see here up on the pictures, you can see what the remnants of a distant nuclear explosion looks like, but also the two bombs that are used to end the war for World War II. From Little Boy, these are the code names. There's Little Boy and then Fat Man here as well. But think about the future implications that the use of nuclear weapons has had on our society, and write some of those ways down in terms of how's our world been altered and changed and rocked by the use of nuclear weapons. So consider that, and get that down in your bell ringer, and then turn that into me next time you are in class. That way I can get credit for you. All right. Continuing our notes from yesterday, we got to the fall of the Philippines as well as the Japanese advance throughout the war. Not in that order, but we get the Japanese advance first and then the Philippines falling to the hands of the Japanese. That is something that we did discuss as well. However, when we talk about Pearl Harbor with the war at sea, what ships were not destroyed during the attack at Pearl Harbor? If you think about this, we did kind of go over this in our classes talking about the aircraft carriers that were not in the Pearl Harbor at that time. So this is an incredibly important statistic here because aircraft carriers, as we saw in our battles worksheet, if you kind of filled that out and looked at someone else's answers, you saw that these battles become an incredibly important role. At least these battles have a large role to play when it comes to aircraft carriers in terms of their capabilities for warfare in a modern day war, specifically a 1940s modern day. Main reason is why these are important to war is mostly because they extend the areas where planes can fly. If you have a regular airport on an island, you can't move that. The planes can only reach as far as that island allows them to go, and as far as how much fuel you have. With an aircraft carrier, you can have them move the airport with the aircraft carrier. Thus, you're extending the radius as to where planes can fly. Now, these battles that are fought open on the Pacific Ocean, they're fought between aircraft carrier fleets, not battleships, but aircraft carrier fleets. The reason why this is important is because these aircraft carriers, you're able to fight a war without being able to see your enemy on the ship. Beforehand, we have this particular problem that we have to see our enemy before we can shoot at them, and that's incredibly important because radar is still very primitive. You don't want to shoot at something you can't see, which is a big issue for a lot of people when it comes to this war. But with this particular campaign, the first battle that we see, this is the Battle of Coral Sea. It ends in a draw, but it also prevents Japanese advance into Australia. So we don't win it, but at the same time, use of aircraft carriers and use of aircraft on the open sea allows us to prevent the Japanese advance into Australia. Now, after this war at sea, the Japanese begin to fall back. And we begin, as the American Navy and military, begin a strategy known as island hopping. Now, you can see the map here at the bottom where all these battles take place. You can see where Pearl Harbor, where that's attacked, the Battle of Midway in June of 1942, but also to where we eventually will hop islands. You can see there's a lot of islands here that we're missing, that we're not hitting intentionally, but you can see where these are all getting taken, and we're pushing ourselves across to get to the main islands of Japan. We're using the strategy of island hopping. But this tactic, island hopping, is specific, was when we attack specific enemy islands intentionally to cut off the supplies from other enemy islands. So we attack the ones that we know are important, that have the supplies, and that's where we can cut off the other islands that are important to the Japanese and their defenses. All right. The main goal here is for us to set ourselves up to find an island, particularly here in the Marianas, are the first ones that allow us to do this, to bomb Japan. So we can take bombers, fly them up to Japan, bomb them, and then come back and all in one flight, and it's something that can work for us in that way. So island hopping is an incredibly important strategy for us here because it allows us to take away Japanese supplies, but it forces at the same time the Japanese to become extremely desperate. Now here's where this becomes negative for the Americans at this point. The Japanese, while they are reeling, losing ground, losing territory with the U.S. island hopping strategy, they become desperate for a victory at Leyte Gulf. Now, geographically, Leyte Gulf is right here in the eastern part of the Philippines. You can see this is Batan and Corregidor. This is early parts of 1942. We talked about that yesterday with that particular instance there. However, Leyte Gulf is a new naval battle where aircraft carriers are used in this battle, and also battleships. But also, the Japanese will employ the use of their kamikazes. They ask the soldiers to give their ultimate sacrifice for their countries to essentially get in planes. They put a bomb in them. They fill them with fuel, and then we tell you to intentionally run into ships, or fly into ships, excuse me, in that way. And that's the main goal here. You want to fly your plane into ships to cause the most damage with the bomb in the field that your plane has, and this is what's going to take the ship out. So this becomes a devastating tactic the Japanese plan to use, which shows the Americans how dedicated the Japanese are to defending themselves. Not only as a way to punish those that are attacking the Japanese, but also as a way to help them understand that, hey, you're attacking us, we want to dissuade you from that. So morally, not only physically, but also morally, this is supposed to dissuade Americans. And it worked. This is the worst fear for American sailors, that these planes could have the possibility to fly into them, fly into them at a rate that almost as unprecedented as it's ever seen before in this war. Never before have the Americans could possibly think about this being a possibility for them, that a plane and a pilot would intentionally fly themselves into a ship, killing themselves to do that intentionally, not as a tactic to that many Americans would be willing to accept on their own. So this is something that is very difficult for the Americans to accept. All right, so the use of kamikaze shows that the American forces are against an enemy that is willing to do anything at all costs to defend their country. Now, the main goal is, and the main key point about this is that the American forces have yet to even engage the Japanese on the main islands of Japan. If I go back to this map here, you can see that we're still engaging the Japanese in this section. We need to engage the Japanese in their home islands. The key question becomes, how do we do this and how successful will we be? So, the fact that the Japanese are so dedicated that they want to use kamikazes, that they want to use banzai charges with the Battle of Okinawa, and the fact that they lose so many soldiers in the battles of Iwo Jima, they are very dedicated. So, these are the toughest battles fought by any American forces during World War II. So U.S. leaders had to come up with an advantage to find a way, hey, what can we do? What can we develop? What can we utilize that gives us an edge in this campaign that can also save American lives while taking the enemy's life at the same time? So what can we do to edge this out? And you know, conventional bombing, it worked for some point, but it wasn't going to break the Japanese back. It wasn't going to have them surrender. The United States develops the Manhattan Project, which is the code name for the project to create the atomic bomb. Now, the United States knows there's two ways to create the bomb. There's a plutonium bomb and a uranium bomb. Instead of picking one, knowing which one is better, they said, we want to make sure this works. So they're going to double up on everything. They're going to do both plans. They're going to make sure that they have one crew, sets of thousands of workers are going to work on the uranium bomb. Another set of thousands of workers are going to work on the plutonium bomb. So you're talking about a massive undertaking that cost billions upon billions of dollars of U.S. money at that time, in 1944, to come up with this particular goal. So the code name for this project is the Manhattan Project. This is one of your study guide questions about the project to create the atomic bomb, because the United States needs to find a way to get this war ended. Now, the United States, however, has some decisions to make, because the atomic bomb is a possible solution. Isn't the solution yet, but it's a possible solution. You could still have a massive invasion of Japan, which would cost millions of American lives. In fact, that was estimated. 1.5 million lives would have been lost if we lead an invasion of mainland Japan. We could test the nuclear bomb on a deserted island that the Japanese can watch and see its destructive power, and to eventually, hopefully, that they surrender then. We could blockade Japan, thus continuing conventional bombing, destroying the Japanese cities and populations, making sure that they surrender then. Or we could lessen the terms of our of what we're asking them, and that would force them to surrender. So there are many different options besides using the Manhattan Project. However, many scientists, many politicians, many military officials, they go through the different goals here, and they tell themselves and they tell the president to use the atomic bomb. But here's the problem. FDR passes away on April 12th, 1945. As this project is being constructed, FDR dies. He's not able to see it finished into its fruition. Harry S. Truman takes over as president now. And this is FDR's third vice president out of 4 different terms that he's elected. So FDR has gone through some vice presidents, which shows you how crucial the vice president is to FDR throughout his presidency. Truman takes over, but when he takes over as president, he has no idea the Manhattan Project even exists. So if you're running as vice president in FDR's administration, if you think of this as a car, the vice president is essentially sitting in the trunk, not even knowing where you're going, and you just kind of open the trunk when you're needed, and you kind of get an idea there, if you've been allowed. Truman is thrown from the trunk to the driver's seat of this administration, and he has no idea that this Manhattan Project exists. So you have this unexperienced, unknown guy that nobody knows who he is, where he's from, what are his policies, what are his goals, and now he's expected to make this decision on the atomic bomb. And this is something why it's important to kind of consider this as a way of Harry S. Truman making the decision on his best abilities, the best of his abilities to make these decisions. Reason why is because if you're a new person into this office, you weren't voted in, but you might rely on these same American people to vote you in for a second term of your own, not just finishing up somebody else's. You need to ask yourself and ask the American people this question: if I sent someone's brother or father or uncle into battle in mainland Japan and they died, and then I told them I had a weapon of mass destruction that could have done the same job with much less loss of life, how could I answer to those people's families, those soldiers' families, if I told them this? So as a result, this idea of, how much life is going to be risked here is incredibly important for Truman in terms of his decision to make this decision with the atomic bomb and to drop it. So 3 months into his presidency, on August 6th, he makes the decision to drop the atomic bomb. On August 6, 1945, the Enola Gay flies over Hiroshima, Japan, and they drop the bomb. 3 days later, Fat Man, bomb codename Fat Man, is dropped over Nagasaki, and thus, as a result, the Japanese surrender. Now, the reason why Hiroshima and Nagasaki are targeted, which are very unknown cities in Japan for us, geographically speaking, is because these two cities were not targeted by conventional bombing. American scientists wanted to use this as an experiment. Yes, we tested the bomb. We see its destructive capability, but we don't know how it's going to react to an urban population. And we're not going to test it on our own people. So we want to choose cities that have not been targeted by American conventional bombing because you want to be able to determine how destructive this bomb is. Hiroshima, bomb is dropped. Little boy dropped. 60,000 are killed instantly. Hundreds of thousands, I believe it's 160,000 total, are dead over the course of the following months. Nagasaki, 3 days later, that bomb is dropped. 40,000 die instantly, and then another 80,000 people die throughout the course of the rest of those months after that bomb is dropped. The Japanese get the hint, and obviously they surrender on August 14, 1945. But these bombs are devastating, and they usher in a brand new era in military might. And the Americans have the upper hand because we're the first and the only ones in world history to use an atomic bomb for war purposes. All right. So these are the notes that we have here. There is a video on YouTube that I want you to watch, and it's on my Canvas page. If you go to my Canvas page at the bottom here, it's 323. Download the notes. Here's the notes page that I want you to download. This is from yesterday. But if you download this, get those notes, go back in the beginning if you need to check this out. But you can end the war in the Pacific, go through the notes, and then the following video here, start at 1:20:23. So 1 hour, 20 minutes, 23 seconds. Start that video at that point, and you will see how the atomic bomb is not only developed, but also utilized against the Japanese and what methods are to go on about that. So this will give you some perspective on that. So this is all we have for World War II. There's a section tomorrow on Monday that we're going to go over. But there's one more part we want to discuss about the social impacts of this war. What does this war do to all the groups who took part in it, specifically here in the United States? How does this war affect Americans from a social standpoint in the United States? And we're going to look at that on Monday. All right? Everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy the sun. I know the snow kind of hurt our spring-like hopes for the future, but the sun's out, and we will be able to utilize, hopefully, this good weather in the next following weeks, and the snow will be all gone, so we don't have to worry about it. All right? Everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy, and I will see you on Monday.